Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Uriel, Independent News, Yerushalayim, Israel. What do you think about the United Nations that took the vote and favored the so-called Palestinians last Thursday?
Well, the Palestinian-Israelis quarrel is a long history, and it seems that nothing like United Nations resolutions will solve something. Although maybe both the nations, both the parties in this dispute want some kind of peace and long-lasting peace, but because of the interference of the politicians, nothing that seems to be a peace can be achieved.
But let me ask you a question. During Abu Mazen's speech at the United Nations this past Thursday, he did not even recognize Israel or Jews as a nation at all. Why would that be?
Well, part of the problem is that most Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority tries to be, let's say, very, let's say, we can put it like this, to find suitable companions to their dispute in the Arab nations, and this is why they don't want to recognize the state of Israel. And on the other side, they should be very careful, because the General Assembly of the UN wants some kind of, let's say, the two parties to be presented at the same level. So the United Nations wants that not only the Palestinians will say that only their nation, their state should exist, but also the other party, it means Israel. And this is something very delicate. You know, well, generally the United Nations didn't solve any problem. As long as the United Nations exists, really any problem between nations was not solved. There was some kind of calming down of the problem, but no problem was really solved. I think that this problem, it's really very...
But why did Abu Mazen did not even recognize Israel as a nation? I mean, if he really wanted peace, I believe that the first step would be to recognize the nation of Israel as a nation, and he did not.
That's right, but Abu Mazen have to pay, to pay something for all the Arab nations that are located in the
supporting
Middle
him,
East. And most of them suppose the extreme way of looking upon the solution of the Israeli-Palestinian problem. I think that Egyptian President
Mohamed Morsi,
that he is quite a qualified politician, understands that the state of Israel should be recognized, because without this he can go back home.
Yeah, but we must understand that this Mohamed Morsi supports the terrorists in Gaza, one named Haniya, and the terror organizations that are operating within that strip. As you know, we need to understand that any time that a nation supports terror against Israel, that tells me that they're not friendly towards Israel.
That's right, but according to what I know, Mr. Morsi, the Egyptian president, is quite capable to handle only the local problems of Egypt, which are not simple at all at this time. So, and great support, great economical support comes from the United States to Egypt. So, well, I think that if Mr. Morsi should be the one that should advise, can advise Mr. Abu Mazen how to act, he should advise him to recognize the state of Israel, and this way make some call.
You know, there's a saying in America that says that you can take a horse to the well, but you cannot make it drink.
Right.
So Abu Mazen basically does not want to drink anything that has to do with the nation of Israel, because he won't even recognize Israel as a nation as a whole. One final question. As a Jew that you are, do you really think that we will ever have peace with the so-called Palestinians?
The reality of these days shows us that there can be peace and long-lasting peace between Palestinians and the state of Israel only if the politicians will step aside and let something like the general opinion of the people of all the inhabitants of the Palestinian Authority in some kind of a public, let's say, pronunciation, or
do you want peace?
I think that Palestinians, as general, they want peace.
This is real independent news, Jerusalem, Israel. Shalom.